So most of these templates were here before, but what is new is this guy right here, and this mobile backend. Okay? So if you're just getting started and it's saying, okay, I want a Xamarin.forms app, my app probably needs to talk to some sort of backend system, probably. You probably are going to want to build it with ASP.NET Core, especially if it's greenfield development type stuff that you have, or if you're just wanting to see how would I set up that kind of interaction to have it flow through, file new project, you'll get a working solution right out the door. Now, instead of actually waiting for this to launch, I've cheated and already created one because I did not trust myself enough. So the default app that it goes through and builds out for you is your standard to-do app. Okay? So you can add tasks. They have a title. They have a description. I think we've all probably seen that demo about 50 times. I'm not going to go through and bore people with it. But what's actually interesting here is taking a look at what does Xamarin.forms shell actually end up looking like. So somebody confirm. I think that's big enough and readable. Yes? Thumbs up. I'm getting head nods. Cool. We're going to keep going. So when you go through and start a new Xamarin.forms project with shell, you're going to end up with this app.shell.xaml file. And this is the big new feature. Now, the goal with shell is the Xamarin team noticed that when people start building their apps, one of the biggest hurdles that they start running into is how do I deal with navigation between my pages? Because you end up with some sort of design, whether you do it yourself or you get something from a designer that says, okay, I've got my login screen, and then maybe the user goes to this screen, and they want to view user details here, and the user wants to pull this information here. We got to view our to-do list. We need to have a screen to go through and add a new item. How do I do that interaction? And in Xamarin.forms, prior to 4, you didn't really have anything out of the box. It was, here you go, build up your pages, you deal with the navigation. Yeah, sure, we're going to give you a push-pop type method to be able to do that navigation, but there was nothing sort of overarching to actually do that structure. You were sort of left up to yourself to figure out what is this going to do and how is this going to work. So with Xamarin.forms shell, they went through and said, okay, there's two kind of main layouts that we see people doing. Something where you've got sort of your hamburger menu up in the side with the flyout, and you kind of pick your option there, or something that usually involves some sort of tab type bar, whether it be sort of bottom tabs there, maybe a top tab bar to go with submenu type items. And so that's what's been built into shell. You can go through and lay out your app, and the default one comes into here. So, and just to prove that this works, I do have iOS and Android running here. So let's grab this guy, because I believe I've got my list app on both. And for reference, these guys are both pointed to that same Azure App Service. I just did right-click Publish, sent it up to Azure, and away we go. Okay? The only thing that I had to change was changing the URL out to point to my subscription's URL once it went up. That's not the right page. Go back. Cancel. And clearly, Android needs to be fixed. We'll come back to it. But it's this sort of basic app, and when you go through and set up the tab type layout, like what you see here, you end up on both iOS and Android with, that's not the right one, that one, with sort of this bottom tab approach. Okay? The page itself doesn't contain any of the navigation features. If we go and actually take a look at what ends up in the items page, it's a stack layout, it's a list view with a bunch of items, and that's it. All of this extra chrome around the outside of, okay, this add button that we've got going on up here, these tabs at the bottom, this is all being controlled by shell. So sort of as the name implies, it's expected to sort of wrap around your views and give you that outside stuff. Stuff that comes built in the box with shell is basically your navigation bar at the top. It adds search functionality, so if you have sort of a list view where you want to do searching and filtering and that sort of thing, that comes out of the box to where you can build it, and you can turn all of this stuff on and off as you see fit. Okay? Going back over here. So, and I think this is probably, unfortunately, where I left my Android app sitting, is you can then get really fancy and figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Do I want individual flyout items? That's not where we're going. Promise I can type. Always harder with so many eyes. But on the individual flyout items, so now from the side I'm saying, okay, when the user goes through and picks this flyout item, I want a tab bar along the top for sort of sub-navigation to go between a couple of my shell content pages. I want my main shell content to just show my items page. And then I want these two tabs along the bottom as well. So all of this sort of header, footer type information and how that navigation goes between them, you lay out in one spot so that you can see the relationships between all of your pages and have all of that flow through.